This is Up for Debate presents Scary Movies to Watch in the Dark. Tonight, episode number 167, recorded December 4th, 2019. Chapter 6, Hereditary. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the spooky, scary December episode of Up for Debate. I am Sean Jennings, joined as always by a man who is just cursed. He's just a cursed man who will lead us all to great riches. Matt Mariani. Hello, Matt.
As you said that, I just banged my elbow on the desk.
Oh,
so
no.
I think this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, or I have fulfilled the prophecy.
You are the chosen one.
I am the chosen one.
You sure are, buddy.
How are you doing today, Sean?
I'm just so excited to be here, Matt. We've got our sixth scary movie to talk about tonight, 2018's Hereditary. Before we do that, Matt, though, I gotta ask you a question.
Oh, I thought it was time for a word from our sponsors already.
A word from our sponsors, Israeli Milk.
Israeli Milk.
When you're thinking of tasty Russian milk, look no further than Israeli Milk. The official milk of the Mir space station, which burned and crashed into the ocean. Matt, slightly off topic, but very related to the show. Did you see it dropped today, the first trailer for No Time to Die?
I have not. Today has been a really busy day.
Well, you have a real
Sean.
job.
It's been not just there. It's been pretty busy in the sports world. It's been busy with.
Oh, that's right. That isn't the sketchy hedge fund manager who is under investigation by the FBI going to buy like 80% of the Mets. Good job.
I'll take this. You know what? I'll take the sketchy hedge fund manager who has $4 billion. Sure, sounds good to me. $4 billion can buy you a hell of a lot of good baseball players, Sean.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it bought him the New York Mets. It
did, and hopefully, it'll buy me a lot less heartache in the years to come. So that I've been following that news. There's been all sorts of news. The New York Giants may be getting a new head coach after the season's over. So there's a lot of news around that. So no, I did not get the chance to see the new trailer for the upcoming Bond film.
Okay, well then we will not talk about it.
I don't know, the way you said it sounded like you said it with glee. Like you were like, is it good? Is it? I don't know what to think.
Well, I'm not going to point out anything in particular because I don't want to spoil it for you. But after watching it, I was very excited. I thought the trailer was good. It felt very James Bond-y. A lot of big action set pieces mixed with Daniel Craig scowling at people. I was definitely on board after watching it, so I recommend you check it out.
I'm checking it out right now. I'm actually 20 seconds into it.
Yeah, you don't necessarily.
I just couldn't wait.
The dialogue is very vague, so just watching the video of it should accomplish what you're going after. It's a lot of stunts, a lot of big stunts.
Yeah, it's it looks like a Bond trailer to me so far.
Yep, very much so. Very much so. No hint of the new theme song. We do get a slight appearance from Blofeld in prison, which is interesting. So they're definitely continuing the continuity from the previous film.
Yeah, and I noticed that you have Ralph. Is it Ralph Fiennes as M?
He's back. Q is back.
Mm-hmm.
Moneypenny is back, but we now have the Rami Malek. Doesn't come until the end of the trailer, but he comes in. Also, the woman who's playing the other 00, his adversary, who essentially says, "Stay out of my way, old man." So,
isn't that crazy that Daniel Craig is now the old man?
Well, considering how beat up and broken he's been making these movies, I kind of get it.
Yeah,
I think he's got some sort of moderate injury on every one of these.
It's like the passage of time. So much time has passed.
But it's also one of those things where, because this will be his fifth and final Bond film, and then you look back at somebody like Roger Moore, who did, 7?
Yeah. I believe so. 7 or 8.
And I'm like, that's a lot. Like, more power to him to have lasted that long. We kind of underestimate it.
Yeah. Um. Honestly, I'm surprised there's so much Bond in this trailer
Yeah.
because a lot of the pre-production hype so far has been around him not being in it. So they really should. I wonder if that's a reaction to. Oh, wait, they're about to do the Rami Malek reveal.
Yep. Yeah, he's got his little Phantom of the Opera mask thing going on.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I
Yeah, he
agree
looks
with you.
scary.
I agree
Yeah,
with
no,
you.
I wonder if how much of that is because of the backlash with, I guess, the announcement of the uh the announcement of I forgot her name. What is
Yes.
the double O agent?
Right, the new Double O agent. I agree with you, but the other thing too is, I mean, he's the face of the franchise, right? If you put up a trailer and he's barely in it, you're not going to know what movie you're watching. So
Yeah,
he's got to do the James Bond line. He's
of course, of course. I'm just surprised that it's. I don't know. I thought maybe they would have more of her in it
it'll be
because
interesting to see when the movie actually comes out how representative this trailer is.
yeah, I feel like there's a lot of misinformation. Obviously, what going on with this? There's a lot of misdirection, misinformation being spread. I think intentionally and unintentionally, just to drum up people, just drum up conversations,
Sure.
which I think it could pay off. Um, and we really just have to wait and see. So far, yeah, I think after seeing the trailer, I'm pleasantly stoked about it, which I haven't been in many months. So
Yeah, it'll be fun. We'll certainly watch it in 2020 and talk about it here on the show, as we're obligated to do. And now I'm like, well, shit. I don't like going to the movie theater, but on this show, we did an episode on Force Awakens and we did an episode on The Last Jedi. Like, do I have to go see the new one?
you do. I think you're contractually obligated. The new
Ugh.
Star Wars you're talking
And we
about.
do, yeah, and then we do a whole episode on it.
Oh, we'll talk about it. We'll
Ugh.
talk about it for sure. That's something, by the way, that I've kind of sweetened to. Pretty much purely, I would say like 80% due to The Mandalorian. Have you been watching? Do you have Disney Plus?
I do. I saw the first 3, I think, so I'm a little behind.
You're only one behind. They've only put out 4
Well, that's the thing is I don't know when they release them. So
every Friday.
Oh,
It's
well,
every Friday morning, I think. At
that's
like
helpful
4
to know.
a.m. Yeah, so you're only one behind.
Okay.
So
But yes,
and
I actually have been enjoying that quite a lot.
I really like the bite-sized episodes.
Yes, I've
Like they
said
really knew what they were doing with that. The 22 minutes, like
someone
that's
needs to
the
figure
sweet
out,
spot.
and I'm kind of optimistic about what Marvel's going to be doing in terms of TV shows on Disney Plus. These big giant franchises, I think, do better in television than movies. I've said for years, I think I've said on the show, I would die. I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but if they did like an HBO series in the Harry Potter universe, that's modern and kind of that serious sort of well-produced thing, I think they'd make a gazillion dollars and it'd be great. I love these big universes, but the way the movies are doesn't really express what we like about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that I'm excited for things like this.
Yeah, it's they've Disney has, say what you want about them, but they've done a great job of expanding the universe and making it relatable to pretty much everybody. At this point, I really don't know, like I can't imagine somebody who is not represented in some way by the Star Wars world through these movies or through these shows. It's like it's covered, it's run pretty much the gambit in an increasingly divided country. I think one of the few things you're going to get people from both sides of the aisle to agree on is Star Wars.
Well, and the great thing about the show is I don't think you have to be a big Star Wars fan to get into it and enjoy it. It's not like there are any sort of existing characters, they're all new characters, so it's not, and even if there are inside jokes or references or stuff in the background, like you can enjoy it without getting those inside references. It does stand alone, which I think is great. When you have It's the same thing with the Marvel movies. When you have a huge interconnected universe, everything is interconnected. So you miss a couple movies and you're like, all of a sudden it's Endgame and I don't know what's going on. And it's crazy. With a TV series, you can really box it in a little bit more and take your time to tell the story.
Right. And those callbacks are more gifts for people that have been there from the beginning, rather than like excluding, like, well, if you don't get the what's going on here, if you don't get the end, then it's very inviting. It's very inviting. So, yeah, Mandalorian has been a win. I've really been enjoying it. It's the first thing the first thing that's given me hope in the Star Wars, probably since Disney bought it, probably since the acquisition. I was really very down on Star Wars for a while. But this is definitely giving me hope. I don't really have a lot of optimism about the movie, Last Skywalker.
No, it's not going to be good.
It's not going to be good. I'm already have kind of I've already kind of accepted that, and I'm at the place where, well, this trilogy wasn't for me. This trilogy was for a new group of fans, a new generation of fans. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for us, Sean. It was for Gen Y.
Well, first of all,
this is a Gen Y trilogy, and that's okay.
I think
they can have their trilogy. We got the shitty prequels. They can have the shitty sequels.
No, the problem is this trilogy isn't for anybody. It's for a focus group in a Disney lab somewhere. Like, that's who it's for. It's not for anybody. It's for everybody, in air quotes. That's the problem.
No, well, they market it like it's for everybody, but it's not.
But that's the problem. It's become muddled because it's not for anybody. It's for everybody. That's the problem. It needs to be for somebody. But I will also say, and we do not have time to get into Star Wars too deep here, but I will stand up for the modern trilogy and say they are not bad movies. I think they're perfectly serviceable movies that I enjoyed watching. Are they great movies? No. Am I going to rewatch them? Probably not. But they're good movies that are good enough, especially when you're comparing them to the greatness that is the original trilogy.
Well, I guess you have a different perspective.
I do.
Being someone who just recently watched all of the Star Wars movies versus someone like me who grew up with the franchise. As someone who grew up with the franchise, I could say that these are very piss poor representations of the Star Wars universe, and I don't think are very good movies. They're entertaining, and I guess stuff happens in them, but Force Awakens was just was a rehash. It was a lazy rehash of A New Hope, and the Last Jedi. I don't even know what to think about The Last Jedi. It was just such a mess. It was a mess, is what I would think of it.
I think it was.
A mess.
I think it was challenging.
It was a complete mess.
No, here's the thing, Matt. You cannot blame the filmmakers for your expectations. That's the problem. It's not the filmmakers' problem. It's not Rian Johnson's problem that you came in with crazy expectations.
I didn't have crazy expectations.
You did, because that's all you're saying is like, I'm comparing it to the old movies and it's part of the universe, all this shit. You're right. I came in different because I didn't have expectations. And that's why I realized they're not terrible movies. They're fine movies.
I can't. It's impossible for me to look at them with any other kind of lens other than.
But that's what I'm saying. Nothing would have lived up to your expectations.
And yeah,
nothing.
I disagree. I think that The Mandalorian is a very good series.
It's a totally
different. It's a different format.
It's outside of the universe.
It's a different format. It's outside of the universe. Well, because it's in the same universe, but it is canon.
But look,
it's just a different time.
The second in Force Awakens that Han shows up and Leia shows up and it's the same shit. You're immediately handicapping yourself. If they had done this totally unrelated to the other movies, just in the universe,
agree.
I think it's
it would have
different.
been much better.
But that's where the expectation comes in, and I don't think that's fair because they're not terrible movies. They're not. They're just not. I've seen terrible movies. The prequels are terrible movies. These are average movies.
Sean, this trilogy made me appreciate the prequels.
Well, look, the prequels are unique.
I've grown my appreciation for episodes 1 and 3. 2 is still the bottom of the barrel for me, but
they're good in like a cult movie. We joke about it kind of way.
No, I mean, yeah, that's true, but they're also not egregiously bad. They're not
stop
like
that.
except for Attack of the Clones, which is egregiously bad.
But I guess that's the issue, right? Would you rather have the prequels, which is an egregiously
but
bad...
it was original. It was original. It was something that had not been done before.
Didn't work, but it was original. So I guess, right, would you rather have the bland reheated leftovers, or would you rather have a new recipe that does not taste good?
Wow.
Because that's really what you got.
I don't know if I agree with your comparison here, but I would just rather have the Mandalorian. Can I pick the Mandalorian? The Mandalorian is like a tasty dessert.
No, it's like that hot new restaurant around the corner with the chef that was on the cover of the magazine, and you're like, ooh.
It's like gastronomy if gastronomy were like amazing. Molecular gastronomy, where it's like they give you that because the episodes are so short. It's like a little one bite. It's like those little capsules that in Willy Wonka where you swallow them and it's like a full blueberry. Yeah. It's like a 3-course meal in a capsule. That's what Mandalorian is so far. So I'm really enjoying it, Mandalorian.
I am too. But we'll save the rest of our Star Wars talk for Rise of Skywalker.
We were here to talk about Hereditary.
We are, Matt. This was our 6th and final horror movie. Obviously our most current one, coming out in 2018. Matt, you picked this movie. Why? Why did we watch this movie?
I did. This was my pick.
You were so excited.
I was, and I still am. This was one of my favorite horror movies in recent memory. Before we started this series, I think I admitted, I fessed up that I'm not the biggest horror movie guy. I do watch them from time to time, especially around spooky Halloween season. But this one really stuck with me. I think I teased at the end of the last episode that after watching this movie, I slept with the lights on for 4 days, and that is totally true. This one really, I don't get scared very often by horror movies. I really don't. I don't really have that kind of history to me, but for some reason this one just really got to me. I'm sure we'll talk about the techniques of what they did and stuff, but I really enjoyed this movie. This is probably the only movie on my list. Like the other two I picked, which were Exorcist and Blair Witch, they were more like, I guess important, significant movies. I enjoyed both of them for different reasons, but this is the first one on my list, the only one on my list where I was just like, I would buy the DVD copy of Hereditary. I liked it that much. I would want to watch this one again and again to just pick it apart. And I actually did. I actually did go back and rewatch this one for this show. So, I enjoyed it. What were your thoughts on Hereditary, real quick, before we jump in?
Matt, we have to play our trademark favorite game here on Up for Debate, which is Guess Sean's Opinion.
Oh, right. You didn't like it.
Is that what you're going with?
I'm going to go with you didn't like it. Because usually we differ about things like this.
You know our slogan, the show where the two hosts agree on everything. I agree with you. I actually enjoyed the movie quite a lot. I thought it was a successful, well-made movie. Now, how I would describe Hereditary, my opinion on it in a sentence or two, is I would say it is a very successful movie, a less successful plot. I thought it was shot very well. I thought the acting was great. I thought the effects were very good. I thought some of the family drama stuff was actually my favorite parts of it, which we'll get into. But the central conceit of the movie around the cult and the demon and all that stuff, I felt landed a little flat for me. I felt like it wasn't properly set up and landed throughout the movie, where I was scared, I was invested in the characters, I just didn't get it. I had to do extra reading to get it. Now, maybe I'm stupid. That wouldn't surprise me. But I just felt like they could have cleaned up that aspect of the movie a little bit. That's my main criticism. I don't have much else to say in terms of bad things, but that's number one for me.
I think that maybe their goals were a little scattered. Would you agree with that? They're like the end goal of the movie. Like it starts out very much stressing the mental health aspect, and then by the third act, you're talking about a demon cult, and it goes kind of off the rails with that arc.
But see, I just think they did a bad job of setting up stuff before it happens, because in a horror movie you have to like set up things before it gets there so the audience isn't confused. And in this, I like the on paper version of this where you're like, oh, you think it's mental illness, it's really the supernatural stuff, and the demon was in the girl's body but it needs a boy's body, and the grandmother was in the cult with this other lady who, like, I kind of like all those elements, but the way the movie introduces them and the order in which it does it, to me, it just didn't flow nicely. So by the time you get to them all naked and bowing and Peter's going up there putting the crown on your head, I'm like, I think I know what's going on, but at the same time, like, what is going on?
Well, that's maybe that's just me, but that's exactly why I like this movie. Because right after it was over, I went directly to my computer and pulled up the Wikipedia.
You shouldn't
and
have to do that.
I disagree. I think that adds an element to the film. It's like the film is now infiltrating your it's infiltrating your time outside of watching the movie. And you got to I did the same thing with all the Marvel movies, with Infinity War. I'm the least Avengers person you'll ever meet. I never read any of the comics, didn't know about any of the heroes going in. After I watched Infinity War, the first thing I did when I got home, it was 1 a.m. I had work the next day. I didn't care. I went to my computer and I researched the hell out of Thanos and the Infinity Stones. Why? Because it got me hooked. It got me invested.
But that's
different. That's what I think Hereditary does.
But that's different.
It's not setting you up for a sequel, but it's getting you to, like, it was in my mind and it stayed with me for like a whole week. And then I wanted to rewatch the movie right away.
I'll give you the rewatch part, but here's the difference between your Marvel example and this, which is at the end of the movie, you generally understood what was going on. Bad guy wants the weapons, the heroes fight him. Pretty straightforward. You wanted to learn more because you were curious, because you want to expand your knowledge. For me, I had to do research to fill in the gaps in my knowledge.
Well, what gaps? What gaps did you have to fill in?
I kept thinking of all the different parts of the movie where I was like, did they, like, set up the girl to get killed? Like, was that on purpose or was that an accident?
It was on purpose. If you watch the movie again, for those of you listening at home, it's the scene where we're talking about the daughter who
Charlie, yes, who gets her
right,
her head taken off.
Who gets beheaded by the telephone pole.
Yes.
If you slow it down or if you freeze it, the symbol of the cult is on the telephone
Which
pole.
I saw, but
yeah. You don't know it until the very end. It's something that you have to, like, think back and be like, oh yeah, that's right. So the whole thing was kind of set up.
But here's the thing about the cult, right? They don't inherently have any supernatural powers.
I think they do. I think they have that demon that they worship that I guess helps them.
But I guess my point is, how do you set up that accident to happen?
He's a demon. He can do supernatural crazy shit. That's how it happens. Like, for me, it was suspension of disbelief.
I agree with you, but like for a movie that does take its time to point out some of these plot things, some of it missed for me. But I generally agree with you, and there are a lot of aspects of this movie I do like. I don't want to just focus on what I don't like. Starting with the quote-unquote twists in the movie, which when they spend the first 30 minutes setting up the creepy little girl, and I'm like, oh, clearly there's something wrong with her. She's not right.
Now, this was something that I wanted to get into more when talking about the marketing behind the movie, but all of the trailers that were released for this movie, if you go back and watch any of the trailers, the trailers make it very clear, and it's a total misdirect. They make it very clear that the movie is about Charlie, and that it's about her get, like, possessed, or that she has some kind of supernatural powers, and it cherry picks quotes throughout the movie that make it sound like this girl is like a witch. Yeah. And it's funny because I think it was the director. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the director of this movie was the one who directed the movie The Witch, right? Or it's somehow connected to The Witch.
You're incorrect.
It's not. Okay. The Witch has some kind of connection. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. They're very similar movies. If you ever watched The Witch, that's why I thought they might have had the same director.
Well,
But
A24 Films produces a lot of the sort of current horror films. Was involved in The Witch.
yeah, many critics compare it to The Witch.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting here. And the audience. Yeah. So if you watch The Witch, I feel like maybe a lot of people that were watching were like, okay, it's going to be like a witch, but like The Witch is set in like Puritan New England times. Maybe this will be like a contemporary version of that. That's the way that the trailer kind of makes it seem. But the film is not about that at all. I mean, you never get the vibe for what the film really is by watching the trailers, and I love that. I think that's genius. Like,
well,
it really takes some skill to pull that off.
I know these days spoiler culture gets a lot of crap where it's, oh, everything's spoiled and we got to be careful. It's hashtag spoiler alert and all this. But I'm going to look on the bright side of that, which is it's given us opportunities where films like, now people are more careful about spoiling things. Back in the day, The Sixth Sense or something, everyone was like, dude, there's a twist in that movie. Bruce Willis is dead the whole time. You know, they weren't careful. But films like Hereditary, and there's another film out that's supposedly very good called Parasite, which is supposed to be excellent. And the only thing I know about it is don't read anything about it before you see it. And I love that. I knew that about this movie before we even talked about it. What I knew about it was there's some kind of twist. Don't spoil it. I think that's a bonus of spoiler culture, is now people do go out of their way to make sure you enjoy the experience. People are more aware of that.
Yeah. I think that if this movie were made earlier, maybe a decade earlier, then you would not have had the same. It would not have had the same impact. It would have been definitely spoiled. Now, the movie is, I feel like, to me it was very much delineated into acts. Like, you had Act 1, they're at the funeral, they're a grieving family. It's the grandmother who passes away. Before the movie starts, they have, at the very beginning, it opens with her funeral, and it kind of deals with the family getting through that tough time. So it's all about that. The real main character, we could actually say it could be one of two people, right? It could be either the mom, Annie, or her son, Peter. Either one of them could be the true main character of the movie. And Annie, the mother, is like really taking the death hard. She gives a speech at the I think it's at the funeral about like mental illnesses and her like that run in her family and all that. She attends a support group. By the way, did you know that if you watch the movie again, some of the members in that support group might look a little familiar.
Oh, are they cult people?
Some of them are cult people that show up at the end. Some of them. So yeah, that was a neat little Easter egg that they hide in there. So yeah, Peter, he's like, in the beginning of the characters go through these like incredible changes as the movie goes on. So I think Act 1, it's like a typical family doing typical family stuff. Obviously, things go way off the rails in Act 2. This is when Peter is going to his friend's house for a party. The mom convinces him to take his 13-year-old sister, which
bananas.
I remember thinking like that would never happen in real life. I think like he's a teenager, like he's got to be like in his late teens, but his sister's like 13. She's like 12 or 13 years old. She's young. Like,
well, and even the excuse he uses, which is like it's a school barbecue or something like that. It's like they don't even go to the same school. Probably he's in high school and she's in middle school.
Right. I wouldn't buy it. Like, he doesn't even say it's a bonfire. I think he's like he says it's like a party
he calls it a barbecue.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So, well, that's just terrible for both reasons. Like, you're exposing your 13-year-old daughter to all kinds of teenage shenanigans, and you're letting her be babysat by your irresponsible like delinquent son who gets detention and stuff. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe
But,
he's a good kid for all I know.
but see,
But
the question is though, is this all part of the plan?
no,
Do you think? Well, again,
maybe
if you assume
it's
her
debatable.
death is part of the plan, she has to get to the party, eat the nut-filled cake,
Right, she eats a
get
cake
driven
that
home.
has nuts in it.
Don't call an ambulance. No. You have to drive her past that exact pole, her head sticking out the window. He has to swerve around the deer to one side and get close enough to the pole to take the head off.
So the way I would think of it is that they lay a bunch of traps, and the one we saw is just the one that happened to work.
How I want to see the alternate version of that, where it's like, he walks over like a net that's supposed to grab him, or there's like a trap door in the floor, and he, like a Mr. Magoo style,
like Home Alone style. Yeah.
Yes, very funny.
Yeah. Now, I thought it would have been kind of neat, and I don't know, maybe it wouldn't work, but like imagine if in the background of one of the scenes you see like a news report, and then the news lady is talking about how this cult symbol has appeared all over town and is in like different places. Like,
ooh, you're sounding like a horror movie writer.
Maybe you could like allude to that being the cult trying to set up a bunch of traps. That maybe it would have lended a little more credence rather than like you said, it is kind of unbelievable.
But
there's one thing happened. Everything happened to fall in place and go right.
But here's the thing. I'm going to stand by. I think that was an accident.
You think it was a total coincidence?
I think it was a 100% total accident, and it accelerated. Because here's the thing, right? Before she dies, nothing weird and supernatural happens.
No. The movie's very normal.
So my theory is they could have killed her at any time. Now, maybe you could argue, after the grandmother died, the grandmother was protecting the girl and they killed her then. Maybe I get that. But also, you could make the theory that it was an accident, and that's what spurred them into action. They had to do something now because she was killed, whether she got her head knocked off or however she died. And that's what triggered the supernatural events of the movie.
So you're saying the daughter's death is what starts the puts the wheels in motion.
Yes, exactly.
Potentially.
I'm saying if she hadn't died in that accident, I don't think they still would have gone ahead with making the transition then. They could have waited. They could have done it whenever. Why did they do it right after the accident? Because they had to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's definitely an interesting dilemma here, because the main thing is that you have the symbol.
I know, but then
you have the cult symbol that is on the telephone pole, like carved into it.
But I will point out, we do not see the telephone pole during the accident. You see it after the accident.
Right.
Theoretically, it could have
with
been
the symbol that you have, and you barely even see it. It's like a half-second frame.
But it could have been put there after the accident.
Could it have? I thought they show it like right after she hits it. Or is it in a scene where they like go back to it?
So
or something?
The progression is he drives home in sort of a daze. The body's in there, and he lies in bed, and you just hear Toni Collette go out to the car. You hear her scream, and then it snap cuts to the head on the ground during the day.
That's right. It does.
Then it pans up or it pans out, and that's when you see the symbol.
But my argument with that, and we may be getting too spoilery here, but we've spoiled a lot. If they do something with the head at the end of the movie,
yes,
if you remember, so the head wouldn't still be there, and the symbol, they would have taken the head and then carved the symbol. I would think
that's a fair point. I'm gonna give you that point. I don't think we know the answer. It's weird.
My opinion is that, well, first of all, we can establish that I think they put it there so that people watching the movie, the meta reason is that people who watch the movies would have the exact same conversation that we're having about it. But I think that the symbol was like a magnet. like it was like engraved with like supernatural. We see a ton of supernatural stuff
Yeah.
happen at the end of the movie in the third act, which I call the supernatural act for that very reason. So I think it's kind of like it's saying that the demon cult has this power and had it all along, and they use their special dark magic to precipitate these events and put them in motion.
But see, I also am going to challenge that because they specifically say that shit ain't going to happen until the soul's in a man's body. They specifically say that a girl isn't going to help get them what they need.
Well, they say that the demon can't come back until the soul is in a. He can't come back as like.
But
like he can't be at his full strength until the head is in the body. But I think he still has like partial strength and stuff.
But we never see the cult members actually doing any quote unquote supernatural magic. Really, the only time is when Joni is performing the seance in her own home,
Right.
where shit's going wild.
Joan, by the way, that is Annie's friend, who I think she meets at one of the support groups.
Yes, and we later learn has been in the cult all along.
Right. By the way, that might have been my favorite, like, crazy turn. I think that's kind of for me where things start to like go well off the walls.
Oh, totally.
When she looks at the welcome mat and she sees that it has the same artwork and same patterns, and it kind of as her mother used to make, and it kind of triggers this thing inside her, and she does like some research. Not that I didn't like that. I didn't really. That to me seemed kind of unbelievable.
Well, and that's when I talk about the issues I have with the plot, where like I don't mind the things they introduced. I didn't like how they did it and the order in which they did it, because in that same shot when she goes back to the house and knocks on the door and there's no answer, and then the camera pulls back into the house and you see the triangle's been etched into the table and Peter's pictures in the middle, there's candles everywhere. They do that before she then goes to the house and goes into the photo albums and sees the photos of Joan together with her mother. Which to me is an odd way, because it's like, all right, at this point we already know she's in the creepy cult, that we know her mother's involved in. I didn't need the photo evidence to put those pieces together. Is that really the right order to introduce these things?
Yeah, it's almost like that. It is almost like those two scenes were out of order. Like the other one should have come first, because when she goes back to the house in like a panic. And then, she's looking through the trunk and she sees the picture of Joan with her mother and the connection that they have. And
those great photos where they're like raining gold coins on her. And she's like, those were fun. I laughed at those. Those were so over the top.
I thought it was her retirement party at first. I was like, oh, that's cute. They went to her mother's retirement party because she has like the dress on.
Well, what do you think they were going to do? Like, drink the blood from a goat or something? Like,
the pictures, those pictures weren't convincing enough.
It seemed like a nice cult.
It did. It seemed more like like they would have a pancake social
like
or something.
Club,
it was like a book club. I didn't see them sacrificing animals and stuff. Not very cult like, but they definitely get very cult like toward the end of the movie.
Oh, sure.
Terrifyingly so.
Before we get into the third act, can I talk about one of my favorite sections of the movie? One of the things I liked most about the movie?
Definitely, yeah.
We've seen a lot of horror movies on this show over the last 5 weeks. And the one criticism that I have, and this is true of the horror genre in general, character development. There's very rarely character development. They come in, hi, nice to meet you, stab, 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 end of movie, right? This movie, I would argue, is more of a family drama than it is a true horror film. And this focuses heavily on these characters. I give Toni Collette is a superstar in this movie. She's out of control. Actually, I thought all the acting was really good. But I enjoyed her especially. But one of my favorite scenes in the movie is where the three of them, after Charlie's death, are eating dinner at the table. And there's sort of that simmering, and then Peter and Annie go at it. And there's screaming, and that was such a great just dramatic scene. There was nothing supernatural about it. There was nothing horror about it. It was just these people confronting 2 recent deaths in their life. Who's to blame for what? Their past struggles. I really liked that scene in a horror movie, and that's what one of the things I really liked about this movie is it wasn't just about the scares or the spooks or the whatever. It was dramatic.
Yeah, that's
You're like, Sean, you totally missed the point of the movie.
Yeah,
it's about the spooks and the scares.
I was actually when you said that we weren't sure if it was like you thought it was more of a family film than a horror film. I thought it was like very much a perfect marriage of both. I thought they really, and not many movies do that. You don't really see that and pull it off and make it work.
Absolutely.
I love the progression. When we start the movie, it's very much about this family and the trauma that they're going through with the grandmother's death, then the trauma they're going through with the young daughter's death, and the family is kind of breaking apart over these 2 traumatic events that happen, and no one's really keeping it together. It then I love it. It almost like has to remind you that it's a horror movie.
Right. You just keep
there's this demon earth, and like it kind of like snaps you back into that, like, oh my, yeah, I'm supposed to be really scared. Like, if anything, I thought like I honestly, when I saw the movie for the first time, I almost fell asleep somewhere about halfway through. I think it was Charlie had already died, and the family were like going back and forth and having fights, and I was like, okay, like it's all going to turn out to be some kind of like mental health, they mentioned that the grandmother had issues, and then maybe Toni Collette will run around and chop people up with an axe or something, and that's how it'll go. That was my prediction for the movie. I was so happy, I guess, to be wrong, and that there's actually this like subversive cult behind the scenes controlling everything. And then of course we have to talk about the metaphors with the miniatures.
Yes.
Miniature. The Toni Collette is a. I love how we keep calling her Toni Collette.
But we do every time we do a movie, we just call them by the actors' names. That's not new to us.
Did you know that? I had to look up. I didn't realize this, but her name in the movie is Annie Graham.
Annie Graham. Subtle. Subtle.
Yeah. It would have been better if like other people's names were actual anagrams of things.
Maybe they are.
I
don't know.
Nah,
I'm very.
I'm too lazy to look at it now, but I think that's cool, and I think you get that first scare in the movie when the grandmother is like in the corner, right, looking at her making the miniatures, and then all of a sudden she's gone. Mm-hmm. Did you see that? You remember that? Yeah. That. The technique with that was outstanding. To me, that there's nothing scarier, and I didn't even really, I had never thought of this until I saw the movie. The movie actually taught me what I'm afraid of, and it's that those scenes in movies that are, it's not the jump scares, because those are crap. It's the like off. How do I describe it? Like off center, off focus things that are like in the corner of your vision, and then you look at them and you see what they are, and it just scares the crap. To me, that is 100 times more frightening than a simple jump scare will ever be.
Oh, totally. And this movie had a couple of those really good. There was a moment. Speaks more of the quality of my TV, but when after Peter bashes his face in and he wakes up in bed, and behind him, up like floating in the corner, is Toni Collette. The contrast on my TV was not good enough. It just looked like a blob, and I'm like, is there something there? I'm sure in the movie theater you would have really seen it, but I'm like, what is that, a person? I couldn't even tell it was Toni Collette. I'm like, what the heck? I turned down my lights even more. I'm like, what is that? It was great because it's actually that whole sequence where she's sort of chasing him around the house. She's always kind of blurry in the background, or she's always just out of eye. I totally agree with you.
Yes, it's genius, and it's in every scene through that chase. Like you can find her, but she's like hidden somewhere, and that I thought that was great. Again, way scarier than a simple like jump scares. I think they elicit like a natural reaction from everyone.
Sure.
And it's kind of silly to like be like, oh, like you're scared. Like I think that's our natural like evolution has taught us that things jumping out at us, we're supposed to react to that. If we don't, we would have died a long time ago.
But I think
whereas like the things that are off center, often like that are hidden, and then you find them. It's just always to me more terrifying because it's like, how long has that been? That's almost like the two are like, I'll use the evolutionary example. Like imagine our primordial cavemen ancestors wandering like on a hunt in a jungle. And then all of a sudden a mountain lion jumps out and sideswipes us, like attacks us. Obviously we're going to be scared. That's like the jump scare. The corner of the eye is like looking around in the trees and seeing that like the tiniest spot, seeing the mountain lion, and then you have a brief moment of like, how long has he been watching me before he attacks?
Well, that's exactly what happened in Blair Witch, right? It's not what you see, it's what you don't see.
Right.
That's scary.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's like the Roger Ebert's quote.
But I think, another thing about this movie is, and this goes to what you're talking about, it's such a slow burn movie. If you had stopped the movie at the point where they head out to the party, and you had said, all right, I'm going to cut to the last scene, and it's like a naked cult, two headless bodies praying to this like junk demon with a girl's head on it with a crown, and this guy walks up and they put the crown on him and says he's now their demon leader of their cult, I would have been like, how do you get from A to B? But that's what this movie does well, is it ramps up, I will say A, in a good way, but B, in such a fast way that your brain almost doesn't have time to comprehend it, and that's a good thing. Because I think if you spend too much time, like I did, and you're like, these pieces don't quite fit, but the movie goes through it so quickly where all of a sudden it's like boom, 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 boom in the span of like 20 minutes. I think that was a really interesting choice to kind of hold off on that so long in the movie.
Yeah, you almost get the sense that, I know this is probably not how it was written, but you get the sense that the writers were writing the story, and then they get to the part where the family's having like that big fight, and then they're just like, oh, how do we resolve it? We need to, like, we can't have them do another fight. We just had them do like 4 fights, like, in the past hour and a half. We have to end it. We have to resolve it. Screw it. Just we'll light the dad on fire. We'll make him get lit on fire, and it'll be that
was insane.
Yeah, like that. It's just like, I think that might have been the part that woke me up. That like jolted me awake. I was just not I was definitely not ready for it.
Well, yeah, that is truly the moment where the movie goes from 0 to 60.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, even the seance stuff is pretty tame as far as supernatural movies go. Like, we've seen way worse than that. It isn't until there that they're really like, oh shit, this isn't just like a spook in the house. This is crazy murder. When she's up in the attic cutting her own head off, I was literally like, what is going on?
Yeah, and those of you listening at home, you won't be able to fully appreciate it, but Sean did the full.
Like I'm flossing my neck.
He did, and it was in sync too. He's got it in sync. His head moves in rhythm with his hands as he saws his head off. Yes.
Though I will say,
it's like Toni Collette in the movie.
This is another one of those. The movie makes a jump it shouldn't. I wish we don't really see Annie become possessed by the demon.
No. I think the only indication prior to that is like she does like a weird thing with her face and her eyes. She does like a weird facial thing.
Yeah.
I kind of, that dream that she has where like she kills her son in the dream.
Yes.
To me, that was kind of like the moment of possession, but I don't think it's really ever clearly stated.
Because it was a little lost on me. Like I said, when, because basically he burns up. Then it essentially cuts to Peter in bed at that point.
And the dad, by the way, the dad is barely in the movie. Like he's a very weak character. Like the family is kind of crumbling around him, and he doesn't know what to do.
You just basically need a no, honey, you're crazy kind of guy.
He's a very ineffective.
He's a straight man.
The movie would have been. I don't know if it would have really lost anything if he wasn't even there. He's almost like the sacrificial lamb because he dies at the point where the movie goes crazy. Like they needed a character to just kill off to make the movie go crazy.
I think you do need a person who's grounded in reality, because I think if it's just Annie like experiencing these things, you're gonna be like, whoa, this lady's like insane. But I think when you have a straight character like that, who says no, honey, you're crazy, or I'm gonna keep this family together, I think it helps you pump the brakes on the action a little bit, and I think we would have accelerated too quickly. So actually, I do appreciate him in this movie.
So you think effective. In a way, maybe he's the one that's trying to keep us all grounded. Like he's kind of like the audience, where
you have to have a no-sayer in a supernatural movie, because if everyone is all of a sudden on board with it, there's no interest. You have to have someone saying, "I don't believe in ghosts," or "Aliens aren't real."
Wasn't that Peter at that point? That's Peter all the way up until his mom is hiding in his bed trying to kill him.
Yes, and I mean, it's true that he doesn't believe, but then there's the scene where they do the seance in their own home, and he's even like, I can feel it and what's going on. He never says, no, it's not happening. He just says, I'm confused. It's really the father who's like, honey, this isn't real. And then, of course, he accuses her of putting her mother's body up in the attic. And I think you need a character who reflects us as the audience, because otherwise it becomes unbelievable. Where we think, oh, maybe she did put her mother's body up there, or this is all a dream. It's all far-fetched. Like, I think you need a grounded character.
Yeah. Oh,
he wasn't a great grounded character. I will give you that.
Yeah, I don't know. He
was boring.
He seemed kind of boring. Yeah, he seemed kind of ineffective. But you're right. He's kind of represents that like logic. There must be a reason this is happening. And then him going up in flames is really like a metaphor for, all sense of logic, all sense of reason just going out the window. And from his death onwards, his immolation onwards, this movie really goes well off the rails. Yeah. I forgot that the reason he burns is because when they're doing the seance, they think it's Charlie's ghost, the daughter, who is controlling everything, possessing everything, not acknowledging that it's really the demon. They throw the sketchbook in the fire, and that's what catches fire. And then I think she's maybe that's the moment when the demon possesses her.
Like I said, it was confusing for me as a viewer when we cut to Peter asleep in his bed and he wakes up and she's like in the corner floating, following him, and I'm like, when did this happen? Like all of a sudden she's doing this shit. Like, to me, I think it worked in some aspects, didn't in others. The demon is sort of ill-defined because even so, and this is another question I had, where the daughter, Charlie, played by Millie Shapiro, I think she's really great in this. Fun fact: she was the first Matilda in the Broadway show Matilda, which you watch her act and you're like, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. But did she know she was possessed by the demon? Like, I'm confused with how much it was Charlie and how much it was the demon. Did, the demon control 100% of her?
Did she know she was possessed?
Because that's what the movie implies, right? Is that the demon has been inside of her all along. That's why she's...
And she is kind of strange. Like, she's got, weird tendencies and stuff.
But that's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's that weird. It's more... She's more like just an awkward girl. She's eccentric, right?
But
she's not doing, really weird stuff.
How much of that is her and how much of that is does the demon have control over her?
I think that it's very subdued in the beginning because the movie wants it to be, because it's still supposed to be about mental illnesses and it's more about this grieving family.
But it's
it is about supernatural possession.
But it's like when the teacher tells her to stop playing with the toy and then the bird flies into the window. Like, did the demon do that?
Yes.
I'm just...
Yeah, I think that's like the demon practicing in a way. It's like trying to, there's two ways to look at it. I guess there's the meta way, where that's to let us know that this girl has something going on with her. And It's remember, the expectation when you watch the trailers going in is that the movie is going to be about this girl being possessed by a demon. It's going to be kind of like a new version of The Witch or a new version of really of The
The
Exorcist.
yeah.
So that's what you're thinking about going in, and you see her do this. That scene is in the commercial, is in the trailer, and I think it's still part of like before it totally subverses our expectation, and the girl dies at the end of the first act of the film.
Right.
I think that's the meta way to look at it, and then there's also the story way to look at it, and that is the demon is kind of rehearsing or practicing or building up his strength so that when he is able to move into the son's body, Peter's body at the end of the movie, he's going to be at like full strength or full form.
So that's what we
he's
assume.
Like rehearsing. That's just completely my take on it when I saw the movie. I could be way off.
For better or worse, they left it vague, and that's okay. I think I'm going to be really honest, which is if this movie were only the third act, like if this movie was just the cult stuff, I don't think it would be a very good movie. I really don't. There's some interesting things. I think it'd be like, okay, that was a fine horror movie. I think you need the first two acts of the really strong drama stuff, the really good acting, the nicely shot movie, the fun stuff with the miniatures and with all the kind of stuff going on to make the third act enjoyable. I don't think without both it's this good of a movie.
Yeah, you've got chocolate, you've got peanut butter, and the first part and the second part are very different for that reason. And I think that's really what makes the movie work. It's what makes it kind of gel. Sean, the coolest thing to me about this movie, the coolest thing overall, is did you notice that we had this whole discussion about how this is about a movie about a cult, about a demon, where it starts out as about mental illness and then kind of devolves into like this movie about otherworldly things. Mm-hmm. But you can watch the same movie and come to the very different conclusion, and that is this whole thing, the whole movie, was about Annie Graham's mental illness, and she imagined this whole thing. That this whole crazy, or the son imagined the whole thing rather, because he's the only one that makes it out alive at the end. That he is now crazy because the grandmother was unstable and so on. And he has just kind of completely lost touch with reality. And there's no demon, there's no cult. This is all just his crazy imagination going wild. Right?
I'm going to be honest. I think that would be a really wrong way to look at this movie.
How so?
I think there's a 0% chance. Because I think, look, I'm all for the it was a dream thing in movies, right? It was all in the character's head stuff. Like, that's always fun. But I think that takes a lot away from the movie if you go that way. Because as much as I criticize the cult stuff at the end, and I do, elements of it were very good. And it was at least at minimum, very entertaining to watch. The effects were really good, and crazy stuff was going on, and the cult stuff. And I think to go that far, but have it be in somebody's head, like, I like the scene where she lights him on fire, or she sees, like, the ants crawling all over him, and it's all kind of a dream. Like, that's good. Little bits of dream. I think if you say the whole thing it's like, it's too far to be a dream.
It goes too... It really convinces you that it's not. Like,
especially because, this drove me a little bit crazy, because again, movie, pick whether you're going to be vague or be specific. After Peter falls through the window to theoretically his death, right, and we see like a little CGI effect of the spirit kind of go down and go into him, not leaving a lot of vaguity there. You know what I mean? So you're clearly saying, spirit's real, and it is now in Peter. I get why you have to do that for the audience, but still, you're not leaving much to the imagination at that point. We know the demon is inside of Peter. We just saw it happen. You know what I mean? And I feel like if elements of this are a dream, I'm just, I don't know. I admit you could see it that way. I think that's kind of a waste to see it that way, because I think it's too good being a real movie to be in someone's head. If that makes sense.
Obviously, I agree that it was not a dream. I'm of the mindset that it was the movie is exactly what it shows you to be. Um, I think that there could be other interpretations though, and that's what's pretty cool about it is that if the movie is kind of watched in reverse, it is about like this family dealing with a lot of issues and a lot of stress, and maybe the anxiety is building up and causing them to have hallucinations and stuff. Um, I think that if I were the director, maybe I would add one scene to the movie and make it a little more clear if that it could be ambiguous. I would say like at the end, right when he's with the cult members and you have they're in the treehouse,
Yeah.
right? You know the scene,
Oh yeah.
and the old lady that the cult lady is giving that like that long little statement
Explaining the plot. Yes.
basically explaining exactly what happened. Yes, which I also was not a fan of. And they describe how like the demon has now found its host and it's going to be him, and it's the very final shot is of his eyes. I think they should have added one shot to that at the end, and it would have been him in the treehouse by himself with nothing
No.
else. It would have just been empty.
No. I want
It
the
would have
cult to
just
be
been him.
real.
Would have just been him, and then it would leave the audience to wonder like, did this all actually happen?
No, that would.
Or did he like obviously he really killed his family, but maybe he imagined the cult stuff because he wouldn't like his subconscious wouldn't let him kill his family for no reason. So he invented like this whole reason. But I guess you would have had to flesh him out as a character
That's
more.
so
Like
cheap. That's such
maybe
a
he's
cheap
getting
out,
picked
though.
on at school, or maybe he's taking drugs or something.
Here you go, Matt. Can I split the difference on your idea? Which is there is a real cult, but there is no magic, no super. The supernatural isn't actually real, and so the cult really does kidnap the grandmother's body. It really does try to do seances and things, and you explain away the magic stuff that happened as something else. But it's Peter's mind that imagines the supernatural parts, but the cult is actually real.
So the Toni Collette floating and cutting her own head off with piano wire.
Yes, didn't actually happen.
That didn't actually happen.
No.
Um,
No, what we learn is the cult actually killed her.
The cult killed her.
Right, cut her head off. Her body's there. I don't think you have to change that.
But why did she have to die?
Because they're a crazy cult. And they have to,
She was in on it at the end. Like, she's all in. She tries to... Wait, doesn't she... But she tries to kill him? No, she just tries to chase him into the treehouse.
Well, yeah, her spooky haunted body. But what I'm saying is that none of that happened. That was all in his head. Any of the supernatural stuff, basically after he slams his head on the desk, right? He really does go home.
He gets like massive. He gets concussed because of that.
Well, you can blame it on that. But what I'm saying is he gets home
don't
and
mind
there's
that
a
theory.
real cult in the treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
But he's imagining his mother leading him to the cult.
But why does he do that with the slamming his head into the desk repeatedly?
Well, I'm not saying that necessarily caused it. Maybe you can just say he went crazy. Why does he slam his? I don't look. I'm not writing
he
the
beats
movie.
himself up pretty bad. Like it's like he gets like bloody black and blues and bloody noses. He slams his head into that desk hard, like over and over again.
But you can explain that away. He was startled by seeing his weird reflection in the mirror, which was also in his head. I don't know. But I'm just saying, don't take away the cult. The cult has to be real for this movie to work.
No, I'm not taking away the cult at all.
Well,
I'm just saying that the...
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, I was trying to go with the like an explanation for the spooky supernatural stuff.
Well, that's tough.
I mean, again, deep down, I'm pretty sure that it all happened. That it was, it is a horror movie.
I agree.
So willing suspension of disbelief. I just love the misdirect, and I love that we can have conversations about, like, you can't have that same conversation for, say, The Exorcist. It was obviously not in anyone's head. Like,
no, that was straightforward.
There are like 3 or 4 people that are like,
sure,
this is real. The mom, all the priests, the doctors, like, this is really happening.
I mean,
But in this movie, I love that it could be kind of debated.
This was by far the most complex horror movie we watched this year.
It was. It merited a lot of discussion, and I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that we could also dissect and talk about.
There is something I have to mention before we get out, which was one of the funniest things in the movie that I saw, which is the scene when they get to the party
Okay.
and you're not even going to realize this happened, but I'm a crazy person. And they set up the fact that there's nuts in the cake by showing one of the party girls who's like drunken at a party chopping an insane amount of nuts.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
The pile of nuts was like bigger than the cake itself. It was so many, and she's just like chopping it and going at it. And I was just like, oh, she's gonna eat the cake and have the nut allergy, like obviously. But it was this like drunk girl at a party just chopping an insane amount.
It's like
of nuts.
a comical amount of nuts.
It really was.
Which, by the way, this is like a rage. This is like an alcohol and weed fueled party with a bunch of teenagers, but somebody baked a beautiful cake to bring to this party.
Well, and the cake already, I thought was already in the background, already baked. So maybe they just sprinkled some on top.
Somebody really took. I feel like somebody's mom was like, "Oh, you're going to a school function? Oh, I baked this cake for it. Like, let me bake a cake." You know, like a PTA mom or something, not realizing that this is actually like one of those debauched teenage parties, not a school party at all.
That was a nice cake for a drunken reindeer.
It was a very nice cake. That's why that's what I really think. And the girl was probably like, "Fine, I'll just bring him the cake."
But
maybe someone will eat it.
Another girl's mom was like, "Oh shit, I forgot you had to bring something. All we have in the pantry is this giant bag of nuts,
this comically sized bag of nuts.
I guess you can take this." And the twist, the mom is Joan.
Ooh, the cult. Yeah, the cult is the one that put the nuts there. That's right. Can't trust those cults. Now, when you said there was a comical part in the movie, my mind immediately went to the part where Toni Collette like repeatedly slams her head into the door when she's like already possessed.
And she's like floating. Door.
Yeah, that was like scary and funny at the same time. It reminded me a lot of like something from The Exorcist.
Yes,
she's like
that. I forgot. Oh, that was great.
Banging her head into the door to like open it. It was crazy.
I also loved when Peter was at school eating outside and Joan is across the street,
just staring at him,
just shouting at him. What was it? It was like, "I expel you! I expel you!"
Oh yeah.
Whatever. But like from way across the street, and he's like, "Is anyone else seeing this?" And I expel you. It was so weird.
Yeah.
Matt, I'm glad you picked this movie. I enjoyed this movie a lot.
Me too.
Excellent choice.
It was fun. I like I said, it is really one of my favorite modern horror movies. I hope that anybody who hasn't seen it yet gives it a watch. It's very well worth your time. It is a slow burn, like you said, but now that you know everything that happens, there's a payoff to it.
Because the first and second act are interesting enough that it doesn't feel like a slow burn. It doesn't feel like it's wasting your time.
It doesn't. I mean, when I was watching it, I almost fell asleep. But yeah, I guess it depends. Honestly, I was getting frustrated because I didn't know where it was going. I was like, okay, this family keeps fighting. And then I really thought I had predicted the ending. And that's the fun thing is when if you go in and you ask anybody if people that have watched just the trailers maybe, and you say, how will this movie end? They'll have no idea. There's no possible way that you could guess all these shenanigans until like maybe the second act. Maybe.
Charlie's death is absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. Point blank.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, do you know that's actually based on a true story?
What is?
Her death?
Oh, is it like an urban legend?
No, it reflects a real-life incident from 2005 in Marietta, Georgia, in which John Kemper Hutcherson, you can tell he killed somebody because he has 3 names, accidentally decapitated his childhood friend and passenger, Frankie Brom, on a telephone pole after the latter had leaned his head from the vehicle to relieve the symptoms of his inebriation. Hutcherson then drove home with Brom's headless corpse in the car and fell asleep until a passerby noticed Brom's body still in the truck the next morning and notified authorities.
Wow.
It really happened.
Damn.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Well, that's it for our scary movie watch. What fun.
Yeah.
I think we had a lot of great movies.
Yeah, it was a good series. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Just a recap. Where would you put this movie in our ranking?
Well, are you ranking it by good movies or movie I liked?
Movie that you liked.
Movies that I liked.
Personal favorites.
How
would Hereditary fit in there?
I would say my Exorcist and Hereditary are like 1A, 1B. I mean, they're right up there. And right behind them, I would put Scream, which I actually really liked. And then Blair Witch probably behind that. How about you?
I would almost be the same. It is really hard to pick between Exorcist and The Exorcist and Hereditary. It's a tough go. Yeah, I probably agree with you with Scream, but I would put Scream right after that. But I don't know. I got to give a lot of props to Friday the 13th for being the one that kind of started it all, in a way.
Yeah, well, again, there's a big difference between horror and slasher, right?
Yes.
You know, if we had also watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween and some of these other ones, then we could have maybe compared. These are tough movies to compare because they're just so different.
Yeah. It was pretty cool that our picks were kind of like mine were the more horror picks and yours were the more slasher picks. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of cool.
It was a good mix. I will say, I think Exorcist is the best made movie. I think as a movie, start to finish, Exorcist is the best on the list.
Cinematically, I have to agree. I think you can't take anything away from Exorcist on that one.
Excellent. Well, Matt, who knows? Maybe we'll revisit this again next Halloween in November and December.
Yeah, it's always the spooky time of year.
And it's a great opportunity now for us to tease December because we already know we've got a lot of great episodes coming up, including the new Star Wars film. Was it right? Rise of Skywalker?
Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
No, yeah, it is. Rise of Skywalker.
Coming out later this month.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We will also, I have not talked to you about this, but I'm going to pitch you the idea right now. In some years, not every year, some years we've done like end of year wrap up episodes. I think it would be fun to do an end of decade wrap up episode where you and I share our favorite and least favorite things from 2010 to 2020.
Yeah, everybody's doing that now because it is the end of the decade. It is. Well, would it be 2010 to 2019 or 20? How would you break up a decade?
It would be 10 to 19.
20, it would be 10 to 19, or would it be 09 to 9? No, I guess 09 is still the previous decade.
No, you got to do 20, and then 2020 starts a new one.
It's got to be, yeah. I guess any other way is madness. So
quite a decade. So yes, we'll have a lot of great stuff coming up in December. Before you know it, we'll be talking the Super Bowl. So we got a lot of great stuff coming up on the show. Our website is upfordebate.tv. Go there and get all the past episodes, including all the movies we talked about. Those episodes are there. You can also subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast. We're everywhere. Video version on YouTube as well. You can see my cat walking around. He's very annoying. You can also follow us at UpForDebateTV on Twitter and email us UpForDebateTV at gmail.com. But that's going to do it for us here. So on behalf of Matt, I'm Sean. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time for a slightly less scary episode of Up for Debate.